Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you physically lost brain cells in real time, staring blankly into the distance as you try to process the sheer absurdity of what was just said? We all have to interact with foolish people at various points in our lives, but the undeniable truth is that a genuine lack of intelligence is not about failing a standardized test or lacking a fancy academic degree. It is entirely about mindset, defensive communication, and an outright refusal to learn. You can instantly spot a genuinely foolish person simply by paying attention to the exact words they consistently choose to use as a shield against reality. The very first dead giveaway is when someone constantly interrupts a discussion with the phrase, "I already know that." This specific phrase instantly shuts down any opportunity for growth, acting as a massive mental brick wall that forcefully stops new, valuable information from ever entering their brain. Instead of actively listening to understand a different perspective, they are merely waiting for their turn to speak, completely convinced that their mind is already perfectly full. Right behind that is the ultimate classic of the perpetually stagnant mind: "It is not my fault." Refusing to take basic accountability and constantly blaming fate for every single mistake or setback is the universal soundtrack of a person who absolutely refuses to evolve. They will point fingers at the timing, the environment, or anyone else in the room rather than looking inward, ensuring they remain the eternal victim. But lean in closely and pay attention, because the third phrase is the absolute biggest intellectual red flag out there, and you have almost certainly heard someone use it in the last 24 hours. When someone crosses their arms and proudly declares, "That is just the way I am," they are verbally locking themselves in a cage of their own making, loudly deciding that personal growth is entirely impossible for them. They wear their stubbornness as a badge of honor, completely unaware of how incredibly limiting it truly is. Interestingly, this exact behavior is perfectly explained by Yale University research on the illusion of explanatory depth, a fascinating cognitive phenomenon proving that arrogant individuals falsely believe they understand the complex world with absolute mastery, making them completely blind to their own crippling ignorance. This blinding arrogance naturally leads directly into their fourth favorite phrase: "That is how it has always been done." Using the past as a permanent excuse to avoid critical thinking is the absolute laziest possible way to dodge innovation, improvement, or basic logic. It reveals a paralyzing fear of change and a complete inability to adapt to new information when challenged. Finally, the absolute worst thing a foolish person will use as a desperate, cornered defense mechanism is the phrase, "I literally do not care." Weaponizing apathy to shut down a valid point just proves they lack the mental bandwidth to engage in a meaningful way, waving a white flag of intellectual surrender simply because they cannot formulate a solid counter-argument. If you have ever survived a draining, exhausting conversation with someone who talks exactly like this, smash that like button right now to claim your survivor badge. And drop a comment below telling me which of these 5 toxic phrases drives you the absolute craziest.